Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are at the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District Board meeting of Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. I'd like to thank everyone for your patience if you were waiting for us. And I know Johan and Jerry, you both were, so thank you so much for being patient and waiting for us to finish our marathon meetings earlier today, which I know we sometimes do. So we appreciate that and thank you for being flexible. Before we call to order, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories. The Sunshine Coast Regional District operates on the traditional territories of the Sechelt and the Squamish First Nations, and we're very grateful to be here. I'd like to officially call us to order, and we have an agenda in front of us. Before we move to adopt the agenda, are there any other items that we need to add onto this agenda today? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, please. So moved, Director Toth, seconded Director Kroll. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. First up, we have the minutes of the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District inaugural board meeting of April 23rd, 2020, Annex A, pages 1 to 2 of their package. Can I have a motion to receive and adopt those minutes, please? So moved, Director Seegers, seconded Director Kroll. Are there any changes, errors, additions, omissions, subtractions, multiplications, divisions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Okay, moving on. We have a couple of presentations and delegations today. We're very grateful to have Johan Murray, the Regional Director of Capital Planning from Vancouver Coastal Health here with us today, and Jerry Latham, the Director of the Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Coastal Health, both here to present updates regarding the capital plan and the Sechelt Hospital minor capital equipment. So I'm going to assume, Johan, you're first on my agenda. Will you be first in presenting as well?
I'm sure I can.
Okay, wonderful. Well, the floor is all yours, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me see how successful I can be in the sharing. I'm sorry, I don't have success here.
Okay.
There we go. Can you see it or not?
No, we're on your Zoom screen right now, Johan.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe if you stop sharing that, if the presentation needs to be open on your computer.
It is.
Okay, so if you go to the share screen button again.
Yep.
And then select, I know we had success at this before, so. There we go.
There we go. Okay,
yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is just an update on our capital plan as we are. Sorry, I'm battling to move it to the next page. There we go. Just as a first, this is VCH's strategic priorities, which essentially is exceptional care, innovation for impact, and a great place to work. So in the backdrop of that, that is driving us. Essentially, the objective of today's meeting is to provide you, the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District, with an update on the capital plan, including approved and notional budget allocations from the province of British Columbia that we have subsequently received. The next slide is just the content that I will briefly go over with you. And then we get into what we call kind of like the big picture backdrop of everything capital for VCH. When we are looking at our facilities, equipment, etc., we are essentially looking at over $1 billion in capital underway at the moment. 2 billion of capital in the priority investment area, and I'll be more specific about that. When we're looking at deferred maintenance, which is essentially the VFA reports that's being done by the Ministry of Health on a periodic basis, it's got a price tag of roughly $2 to $3.9 billion in that range. In September 2017, we had an assessment that was done on the infrastructure for our IMEDS component, and the deficit there was at that point estimated at about 95 million. This is obviously at this point quite a bit higher. When we're looking at major clinical equipment, not our, and this is the items that is typically over 100,000. And when we're looking at the items that is currently within our fleet that is either outside of its length of the expected life of the asset, those are likely around the $260 million range. From a real estate perspective, we are looking at potentially decreasing our leasing space by roughly about 25 million. We are currently looking at an annual lease cost for the health authority of approximately $45 to $50 million. So huge efforts will be put into actually seeing whether we can substantially reduce that footprint to sustain. On the long-term care side, and this will follow a little bit further, we have an initiative underway at the moment that we've started where we're actually going to be looking at revitalizing or renewing some of our existing owned and operated facilities. And then on the master site planning, we are doing final stages of a master site plan revamp for Vancouver General Hospital. And we've just initiated one for the Sea to Sky corridor, which would then include the service deliveries within Pemberton, Whistler, and Squamish. Over to the next slide. This is the extract from the official funding letter from the Ministry of Health. As you can see, I think the top line is probably the most important. We are around the $60 million range at the moment, and then dropping slightly for 23-24 back to about 58.8. That is all notional at this point. So I won't go into too much of the detail, but there is a note at the bottom that indicates to you that we do not have all of this money available to us right away for allocation. So when we are looking at those last projects that's underway, we are sitting at approximately just over 60 million that will be allocated in 2021 with future cash flows associated with those projects. Perhaps I should just stop here, and if there are any questions.
Directors, any questions for Johan at this point?
The one other thing that I also would like to just point out, and it's kind of like the fourth line down within the table, is the CNCP or Carbon Neutral Capital Program. We have seen a substantial increase in that. We used to be at around 1.4 million annually, and that is now going up to about 4.8. So that is a substantial increase that we see there. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, those are the project cost cash flows. specific to the clinical system and the Vancouver General Hospital OR renewal project that's underway.
Okay, directors, any questions, or we'll let Ms. Oh, I see a question here, Johan.
Sure.
Director Hiltz.
Yeah, it might be a question for later on, but various other organizations are saying how their capital planning has changed in light of COVID. So whether you want to say something now or wait till the end to kind of as a summary piece, maybe, but that's something.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to that towards the end. When we're looking at our 2021, we were just doing this in this format to kind of show you where we are actually planning to spend the money within each of the buckets. We are definitely trying to increase the clinical equipment investment that we have within the organization. In the same way, we are also going to be working towards increasing the long-term care investment, and that is in relation to COVID specifically. The next slide is just the financial overview. The reason why it's running out so far is because of the St. Paul's renewal. It's a new St. Paul's Hospital that's being going to be built in Vancouver. And to the left, please note that the forecast, as we see it here, is only relating to actual approved projects underway and not any of the projects that's being planned at the moment. So when you're looking at on the left, what it excludes is in particular the 10-year plan items, which we will address a little bit later within the plan. The ones that are listed here are over and above the 10-year plan. Those are a lot of the initiatives that's being focused on within the Greater Vancouver area. This is a summary funding view. On the left is including St. Paul's, and on the right is excluding St. Paul's. And as you can see, the Ministry of Health is still predominantly our biggest funding partner, followed by the hospital foundations, which is a very, very key component towards delivering capital within the health authority. The next slide is an overview year over year of our various capital funding sources. As you can see, it kind of drizzles down a little bit towards the end, and that is because at that point we are really just driving the large projects. We do not have anything included on the routine capital side for the outer years outside of the first 3 years. And that ties in with our capital funding available to us. Then I think last year we were talking about the 10-year capital plan. So the great news about that is that indeed there has been a focus from the current government to actually put their money where their mouth was. And is moving forward with a number of initiatives. So for Vancouver Coastal, there has been 6 that's been identified. The very first one is for Providence Healthcare. That is the replacement of the Holy Family and Mount St. Joseph to redevelop something new on the St. Vincent's campus in central Vancouver. Richmond Lions Manor is a project that has been on our radar for years. And in fact, we decanted that facility, demolished it around 2014 because of its state at that time, and transitioned the patient population to a temporary hotel in Richmond. So this is a very urgent new build to replace a facility that used to be on the site. The third one is the replacement of Evergreen House at Lionsgate Hospital. That will tie into an expansion at Berkeley Care Center in North Vancouver. The reason for that is that the new build will not be able to accommodate the existing patient population due to restraints around the piece of land. So we need to expand a little bit. The next one is replacement of Evergreen Extended Care in Powell River. That is also well overdue. And then an expansion to Hilltop House in Squamish. We are uncertain about the number of beds at this point, but that's to be determined. And then we are looking at a replacement of Banfield Pavilion, which is the only long-term care facility that sits on the Vancouver General Hospital campus. Within our 2021 submission, there is really nothing new. We are resubmitting what we have submitted last year, with exception, of course, of the ones that will be underway. So we will still be looking at the repurposing of Totem Lodge for Seashell, the surgical services renewal, and then the redevelopment of Shawncliffe. Those are still the three priorities that we are putting forward to the Ministry of Health. Just to come back to the long-term care, the understanding that we have from a provincial perspective is that $1 billion had been set aside across the province for this initiative. And I think there is honestly a little bit of a competition almost amongst the health authorities. It takes a lot of effort to bring these projects to fruition, and our understanding is that the funding will only be approved officially once it has been presented to Treasury Board on an individual project basis. So this is not it's not an upfront allocation. It's an allocation based on the business plan being presented to the Ministry of Health and Treasury Board for individual project approvals. So what I mean by first out of the gate, I think that due to the current limitation on that $1 billion, it will go far, but it won't probably address everything. So we will be looking at other funding sources, whether it be, and this is provincially, whether it be regional hospital districts or other funding partners or even hospital foundations to be able to deliver that. Just as a side note, one of the staff that works for us here, or for me specifically, Susan Lucky has been seconded to the ministry on a 50% basis to actually lead this work for the province. So we are quite excited about that. Any questions on this page, because this is a very important piece here.
Okay, directors, any questions for Johan on this? Not seeing any hands up, Johan, so maybe you'd like to continue.
Thank you, ma'am. The next two slides is a summary of the projects that is currently underway within the coastal COC. So this is from Lionsgate up to Powell River, Pemberton, etc. And then the next slide is a representation of that as well. And then in the spirit of where we are going to be probably heading into 2021, 22, just kind of a little bit of a heads up. We are probably looking at additional funds for one of the projects that was approved by you last year. uncertain yet about whether we will be approaching you for a cost share on that. That needs to be determined, but we are currently looking at about a $72,000 shortfall to be able to deliver that. And then as we're looking beyond into future years, and we're looking to prioritize these projects within 2021, would be the replacement of a high voltage feeder, the window replacement within the old facility at Seashore Hospital, and an upgrade and a modernization of an elevator in Sharncliffe. And again, in view of the repurposing, I don't think that this will be money wasted. It will be seen as an investment into that facility in the longer term. I just want to caution all of you, please do not pay too much attention to these project cost estimates because in my view, they seem to be a little bit unrealistically low. I would more look at a 2.4 million rather than a 1.5 million as it is right now. The prioritization process has essentially been done and completed for this fiscal, and that is against our 60 million with the RCI. But I just want to state that we have, as you may or may not know, we have a new interim CEO, Vivian Eliopoulos, who is the former Chief Operating Officer for Vancouver General Hospital, as Mary has left us in June. And then in April, we had a new CFO that joined us from Toronto. So we are sitting with two fairly senior people that is new to a lot of the processes. And we are actually hoping that we will achieve the outcome of the project prioritization very early in August as we're going through that. So then coming back to, and I think that wraps up my presentation to you for today, but coming back to the earlier comment around COVID, we have in the midst of the pandemic, which was around the March, early April timeframe, we have had some stop starts on some of our coastal capital projects, some of the ones that were kind of looking in its final stages of completion, and that caused us a bit of a hiccup. We are not at this point experiencing any decrease in project cost estimates, which I think in the longer term, looking at where we are heading, that we should probably be seeing a little bit of a downward trend in terms of costs. It looks at the market, I think, is a little bit slow to respond. And from all indications, we will probably be seeing the impact about 6 months or a year later. We have current challenges around the Lions State Acute Care Facility, whereby we have had an initial 3 proponents, one of them dropped off. Interim financials indicated to us that the project is beyond our current funding envelope, although we just went through an increase in the month of January to actually get more money from the ministry towards that project. So it continues to be a challenge, quite honestly. But it is really very early days to have an indication of what the impact of COVID may be on our capital projects. We are probably in a very fortunate position that we have the capital have been allocated. There hasn't been a clawback to any of our capital at the moment. In view of COVID, we have spent to date, just on the capital front, approximately 8.7 million over and above our normal capital expenditure. And that was specific to deal with whether it be equipment needs. The bulk of that was indeed equipment. In addition to that, there were some isolation rooms, other work that happened, surprisingly sometimes in completely unrelated areas, where you have to either increase the security or put additional cameras in or whatever it would be. And at some of the facilities where you have to accommodate an amount of people entering and exiting the building, where you have to look at alternative entrances and exits. So there's a lot of things happening, which I think we kind of like learning as we go. Certainly, when we are looking at long-term care facilities, and I mean, I don't have, you guys know more about this than what I do, but across the world, it has been an absolute problem in terms of the impact that's been to the long-term care facilities due to COVID. So I think I'm uncertain yet in terms of when we are looking at the redevelopment of these projects, how the learnings from COVID will inform a potential redesign or a better design to accommodate anything similar in the future. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Johan. Directors, and we appreciate it. It's interesting. 8.7 million just related to COVID, over and above the normal capital. That's yeah. Okay. Directors, any questions for Johan on his presentation? Well, this is what happens, I guess, when you get us at the very end of a day, and it's a very comprehensive report. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and I think I can also make a comment. You know, the 8.7 as it relates to capital, but the impact on the operating side has been much more in terms of PPE, etc. And I think I shouldn't be speaking to it. Somebody like Jerry is in a way better position to speak to that, but it is quite impactful. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Director McMahon.
I was just wondering if new buildings are built to a particular LEED standard.
They are at the moment, yes, absolutely. And a lot of it is, I mean, we're still going after wood first. That is still there. We are still driving toward LEED Gold in most of the facilities. So we have not deviated from that.
Okay. Thank you, Director McMahon. Any further questions at this time? Okay, not seeing any. Johan, I am going to mute you, and we're going to go over to Jerry Latham and your presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me see if I can work the same magic that Johan did. Here we go.
Perfect. Over to you, Jerry.
Thanks. You see that? Okay. So my presentation today is just very short. It's here to update you on the purchasing or not of the minor capital equipment that I outlined to this group in January. And COVID has had an impact on our ability to purchase. So you'll see that, in fact, we haven't made great strides on having this equipment in-house today. But in the last 6 weeks, we've made tremendous effort to try and get this process started. So what I've done is really just list for you the equipment that's in progress as far as the purchasing. There's a couple of pieces of equipment that, since I've talked to you in January, that actually came off the list. I left them on the list so you could see, but they were donated unexpected to me in January. So let's just go down the list. The defibrillators, that order is in progress. We're hoping to have it here probably by early fall. Same with the ECG. The electrical surgical unit actually was donated. So we no longer need to use funds to purchase that. The slit lamps for the ophthalmologist, that is also in progress. We're just getting quotes on that one. The colonoscope trials are booked, and if you remember my comments back in January, some of these bigger pieces of equipment we just don't purchase. We bring in and trial a number of vendors' equipment. So with the colonoscope, we've got 2 companies that we're working with, and we'll be trialing equipment the end of the end of August and the beginning of September. The lab specimen freezer is in and is being utilized, so thank you for that. The patient beds for the CCU, the trial is completed, and hopefully we'll receive them in the next couple of months. The gastroscope, that's also a trial that's been booked for the end of August, 1st of September. These are all procedural pieces of equipment in the operating room. The bladder scanner, that order is in progress. The ligature unit for the operating rooms was actually a donated piece of equipment. The blanket warmer in progress, as are the stretchers. Ventilators. We have ordered. These are backlogged, as you can only imagine what's still happening in the world today. So we think we might be able to get a ventilator by January, but we're not sure. And so both ventilators are backlogged until the new year. Laparoscopic telescopes, those have been completed and they're in use. So thank you for that. The Berkeley suction system is in order, as is the patient-controlled anesthesia unit, as is the sterile equipment dryer. Blood gas analyzer, that order is in progress. The convection oven actually was purchased with alternate funds. So that came off your total as well. And the washer machines, I just signed off on the orders for that today. So it leaves the list at a little bit less than it was when we were here in January. So it's just, I don't mean that disrespectfully, it is $1 million, just over $1 million. And then the total balance left us with $46,000 from funds that were there before. And then of course, there will be the 220 allocation of 240, which still leaves us with $286,000 approximately. Thank you. So happy to take questions.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Jerry. I'm going to look to directors to see if there are any questions to raise their hands. Director Hiltz.
Yes, thanks. On that, talking about donations of equipment, how does something like that happen? Someone walks and say, I've got a ligature piece of equipment, and they hand it to you. How does that work?
No, it's usually physicians' patients or someone in the community who have some conversations with physicians. Physicians say, I have this, they'll say, we want to purchase something, we want to donate. And the money usually obviously goes through the hospital foundation.
Okay.
And then it becomes a piece of equipment that's designated by the hospital foundation as a result of a donor being extremely specific. And sometimes that's challenging when that piece of equipment is not a priority and not on our list, or it comes with operational needs, and then we have to have different conversations. We were fortunate here where these two pieces of equipment are priorities. So we graciously thank them for that.
Yeah. Director Health, does that take care of your question?
Just to summarize, so it moves through the foundation as the
It does.
donation process. Okay.
It does, and it becomes what we call a designated donation. So an individual says, here is X number of dollars, and I want this money used for this piece of equipment.
Thank you.
Okay, directors, any further questions? I'm just going to just take off the screen sharing there, Jerry. Perfect.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, no, I was able to, it's part of the capabilities that the co-host function gives me. Get to be, handle everybody else's computer. It's interesting because I think that's come up before about the donations of the equipment that, you might get a donor giving a very specific piece of equipment that might require an incredible amount of training or operational funding to go along with it. So it's better sometimes if they just say, well, what can we donate towards?
Yes, thank you. And if should somebody wanting to donate something that we say something in a cardiac surgery that we don't do here, obviously you have those conversations. There are donors in my past that believe that by donating or bringing forth funds for a piece of equipment, that it then obliges the health system to provide a service that we normally wouldn't provide. Johan's smiling. That happened more at VGH than it does here.
Okay, over to Director Seegers, please.
As you indicated, it was January when we saw you last, and you've had your hands full over the last number of months. I know we've expressed our appreciation to Karen Olson. I don't think we've had an opportunity to say that to you. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for all you've done for the community.
You're quite welcome. Quite welcome. I think I've aged 10 years, but it's a tremendous team. Sorry. We have a tremendous team here. And why am I doing this? You only have to know the 5 months that we've gone through. And probably what you're seeing is respect and admiration for the team that worked and are exhausted. And we're trying right now to get everybody off on vacation as quickly as we possibly can. And what really is a legacy of this for me, and I think for our health authority and our community, is the physicians stepped up like I have not seen in my career, where they said, we need a group to form a task force to work very closely with the health authority. And they did. And they selected in 5 of our really bright young physicians who I worked and our nursing leadership team worked with every moment of every day to get prepared. And so some of the most anxiety time during this whole thing was, are we prepared? Because this was new. This was new to everybody. And what do we need to do to be prepared? And we were prepared. When we got our first case, we all sat here for about 5 minutes and went, "Ooh, okay." And then it was games on. We're ready. And we were ready. And we feel COVID nipping at our heels again, but we're ready. And we're obviously much more prepared than we were 5 months ago. But I mean, how do you say thank you to a community when the foundation and the auxiliary put forward $100,000 each of donated funds? I didn't have to ask. I just had to write down what we needed. And as Johan said, you don't think about what you need until you're in it. And all of a sudden, every one of our staff had to wear scrubs. They had to come in their street clothes. They had to change. They had to go into a set of scrubs, and they had to have their own hospital shoes. That's not the norm, right? We discharged and had a vacant unit and a vacant CCU within 3 days. Unheard of, absolutely unheard of. I mean, I can just go on and on and on and on. We had to change negative pressure because of the virus itself and how it works. So we had to do that in the operating room, we had to do it in our CCU, and we had to do it on the whole unit. And costs that you just have to say, we just need it. So our community was incredible. They just stepped up and donated to the foundation and helped us with that. So did we spend that $200,000? We just about spent that whole $200,000. And it was just such a relief to be able just to do as you needed to do. So my apologies for my emotions, but this is me. And yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Is it coming? I thought we'd have 2 months, but Johan, I'm not sure we've got 2 months.
I think it's been great to have you as the leader in that position. I mean, I've been hearing from staff, right, and the community about the role you played and the leadership that you showed. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Over to Director Kroll and then Director McMahon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just to echo what Director Seegers was saying, something that you referenced, and I think everyone is aware of it, is the exhaustion level of your staff. And quite often, one of the worst things is you say get them off on holidays, but a lot of times it isn't until people stop that it hits them. And I'm just wondering, have you sufficient resources to deal with people who are suddenly going to be hit with critical incident stress syndrome? And
thank you for that question and that sensitivity. We do at VCH have a very robust EFAP program, which provides us with counselors just at the snap of a finger. And we are doing that for those who recognize they need some assistance. It's interesting what causes anxiety. Right now, I'm working with the teams of Totem and Shorencliff, and we are accessing that service because we've opened the doors to visitors. And that is creating huge anxiety for the staff because they've wrapped those 2 facilities in bubble wrap for the last 5 months. And we know we have to do this because it has been tremendously hard on the residents themselves and on their families. So we need to do it, and we need to do it extremely carefully. But we also know we can be extremely careful, and yet the virus can get in. So that's happening. We do have people off on stress leave right now. Is it all COVID? Potentially not, but I think there's a factor there. We do know that from a lot of research and the mental health anxiety, not just for staff, but for community members as well, self-isolation. So the foundation did run, I don't know whether you were aware or had an opportunity to watch it, but Med Talks with some of our mental health and psychiatry leaders. That was very helpful. And our staff certainly tuned into that as well. So I think for me as the director here, I just need to have the awareness and the sensitivity, and we'll react when we need to. And we hopefully are.
Okay. Thank you. Over to Director McMahon, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that a friend of mine was your COVID ICU patient. I won't say that he enjoyed his stay. That would be overstating it, but couldn't be happier about the care received and the preparedness of the hospital. And he's much better now.
Thank you. And I don't know, I mean, we VCH, myself, did not do a lot of communicating directly to the community, but the task force did. But one decision that really helped us very early on was those of us who are in rural communities and remote communities, and most of that is on the coastal area under Karen Olson, is made decisions related to how quickly we would transfer people from our hospital to Lionsgate. We knew from what we were seeing worldwide that this virus becomes very deadly very quickly, much more so than anything else we've seen. So when we received anybody with shortness of breath or respiratory, clinical assessment was done and a decision would be made very quickly to move them out before they may need intubation and get them into a higher level of care right away. And I know the foundation and the auxiliary came to me right away and said, we need to buy you more ventilators. And again, that was another decision we made. We don't need the ventilators here. We had 4, we're fine. Where the ventilators need to go was to the higher centers. So we worked with BC Emergency Health Services. We got an extra helicopter on our route, tested, and it worked fine. So they were providing, as they do all the time anyway, the transport that we needed. And that's what worked extremely well for us. So it was absolutely planning and preparedness. And then having, I say, Lionsgate had our back, VGH, St. Paul's, they were all willing and ready to take patients from any of us who were running rural hospitals.
Thank you, Jerry. Director Hiltz?
Yeah, challenging times.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm not sure, we're slightly off topic, but I'm wondering about the time frame that you're looking at now. Like back when COVID started, we were hourly, then weekly, then 2 weeks, then 4 weeks. What kind of time frame are you looking at from a planning perspective?
For our next onslaught of COVID here?
I'm perhaps that's the framing, but just like how far out on the horizon are you looking? Yeah, from a planning, you're talking about planning and preparation.
Well, we are currently planned and prepared. There isn't a lot of rework we have to do. My focus is trying to get as many people on vacation and giving them the relief they need. But I could be talking to you right now and get a text and be told we have a positive patient. That's the preparedness that we have to have. And we are.
And that preparedness is going to stay for forever, essentially, at this point.
Well, I believe, just as and it sounds cliche, but this is the new normal. This is the new normal. You know, I'm not going to contradict Mr. Trump, but I am. We're not going to have a vaccine by this fall. We're not going to have a vaccine, I don't believe, by the beginning of 2021. And then will we get a vaccine that actually is going to prevent you from getting COVID? I don't know that. You may get a vaccine like the flu vaccine that decreases the symptoms. But I sound like I'm lecturing, but I'm not. COVID is not going away. COVID is our new normal. And our staff, our clinical staff, have been wearing PPE since the middle of March for their entire shifts. And that's not going away. Not right now, anyway. So ask me spring of 2021.
Thank you, Jerry. And it's okay to contradict.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to do more than that, but that'd be very
yeah.
political, wouldn't it?
Well, and it's such a testament to the Canadian healthcare system, but also to British Columbia, and how, and the response that we had was based in science and based in epidemiology, and it was really asking the public to come along and be part of the solution, and it's the collective that has really made it work. And I mean, we're looking, I know you're looking at the numbers that are coming from BC CDC, and just just gritting just a little bit, because I know we are too. We know we worry about our community.
I think I echo that. People ask me all the time, and I say, we live in a country where public health trumps politicians. Excuse me. But when we get in a situation like this, it isn't the politician that makes the decision or guides the country. It's your public health. And so that's key number one. And so I'm proud to be a Canadian, proud to be in BC. I've lived and worked in many other provinces, but the steady hand from Adrian Dix, not political statement, fact, and from Dr. Henry has been incredible throughout this. So yes, we are very, very fortunate. And we've got citizens who actually understand public health direction is actually to be complied to.
Thank you. In Bonnie, we trust.
Yeah. I just think, I'm going to answer that. I'm talking about the planning question. One thing that I think is of interest to all of you and all of us in this community is Seashell Nation and I meet every week for 2 hours, and we're collaboratively planning for us being engaged in COVID again, just so that we both understand our roles and responsibilities, and we're building a collaborative plan. And that feels very comforting for me and for Shiloh, Joe, Director of Health Services.
Thank you. Directors, any further questions or comments for Jerry or Johan? It's I know it's been a tough run, and it's definitely a marathon, or super marathon, I guess is what you would call it now. So, well, thank you, Jerry, very much for your presentation, and yes, and thank you as well to Johan. But seeing no further communications, and we have no reports, communications, motions, bylaws, new business, in camera. The only other thing we have on our agenda is adjournment, unless staff has come up with something that we need to deal with. Or thank you so much, Johan and Jerry. And of course, if there's anything else you'd like to say, please feel free.
Well, I just want to say thank you, and I'll try to spend $1 million very quickly.
Thank you very much.
How's that, Tina?
It's really good. Thank you. Please, like I said, please spend this fiscal.
We're on to it.
Okay. That's Tara, you had something?
You just want to receive the presentations?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, so moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you so much for that, Tara. We've had a lot of process today, haven't we? Terrific. Okay, seeing nothing else, once again, thank you all for being here today. And Tina, anything else from your end? Nope, good. Nothing else from the corporate officer or from Tara? Nope, good to go. All right, so with that, I guess I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. So move, Director Seeger, seconded Director Ties. Any debate? No. Going to call the question on that. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you once again, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, Jerry and Johan. Really appreciate it. And good luck. And